Today we're discussing the anti-ICP, who you should never market to. We're going to look at how avoiding the wrong people is just as important as attracting the right ones. Welcome to the B2B Playbook. We built this channel for small B2B marketing teams who want to drive more revenue for their business. Every week, we're showing you how to create more demand for your brand step by step using our 5Bs framework. So if you're time poor, resource strapped, but you still want to make a big impact on your business, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button down below so you don't miss an episode. Welcome back to the B2B Playbook. Today we're discussing the anti-ICP, who you should never market to. We're into season 7 of the show. We spent seasons 1 to 5 giving away our 5Bs framework for demand generation, releasing it step by step. Season 6, we answered a lot of FAQs around building and implementing our demand gen engines. And now we're going to build on that by continuing to look at demand gen, but also at how it fits into a wider go-to-market strategy. Go back and listen to our first 5 seasons if you haven't already. Kevin, for anyone new to us, could you please quickly explain what the 5Bs framework is all about?
Sure thing, George. The 5Bs framework covers first, be ready. That's all about deeply understanding your dream customers. Then be helpful, how to develop relationships of trust with them, particularly online. Be seen, how to amplify those efforts and focus in on those dream customers that you really want to go after. Be better, how to optimize the whole B2B marketing process that you've built up until that point. And finally, be the best. The 5th B, the advanced strategies and tactics that the guys at the bigger end of town are using and what you can do in smaller teams, and also how to build a flywheel with this 5Bs framework.
Very good. Thank you, Kevin. In particular today, when it comes to the anti-ICP, we're really focusing on that first B in our 5Bs framework, aren't we? It's all around be ready, or what we call be ready, which is deeply defining and understanding who your best customers are. That's who your ICP are, but we're flipping the script and now we're actually going to say, hey, who should you never market to? We're going to look at how avoiding the wrong people is just as important as attracting the right ones. And yes, Kevin, we're going to call that your anti-ICP. Now tell us, Kev, why do we need an anti-ICP?
Well, I think with marketing teams, big and small, one of the biggest problem is wasted budget. There might be wasted budget because you have poor sales alignment, you might have slow deal cycles, you might have high churn, and much of it comes from talking to the wrong people in that marketing stage in particular. Top performing B2B companies really strictly define who they don't market to as well as who they do market to. It improves things like targeting, messaging, sales handoff, and overall go-to-market efficiency. So it's really important, particularly for smaller teams who have limited resources to look at this, but it's also a really impactful tool and a new way of framing things to help those bigger teams with their go-to-market motion, with improving efficiency within the go-to-market systems.
If I want to give this conversation a little bit more context, I want to share a chat that we had in one of our customer interviews with a revenue leader who just finished our Chief Revenue School. And he said that the work that he did in Chief Revenue School and really helping to define who their best fit was also made him think about who was a bad fit. And he said that we introduced him to this concept called validating or cataloging the market. And we'll get into that, I think, as part of this anti-ICP. But he said basically he realized by going through this process that they were spending upwards of $5,000 to $10,000 marketing to a company that they thought was going to be really high value because it was a big organization. They would have a lot of seats using their SaaS company, like a lot of seats using their business. So they thought the value in return would be really, really high. And he found out basically that the way their product was set up, it didn't quite fit in with this kind of business. And the features that they needed, they couldn't offer, and they couldn't put on their product roadmap for like at least a couple of years. And even if they did, it wouldn't be as good as what their competitors are doing. So he said, I basically just spent $5,000 to $10,000 chasing this company that even if we got them to a meeting, we would never have done business with them. Or if our sales rep convinced them that yes, we can do this and yes, it's on the product roadmap, guess what? They're probably going to churn and burn your name in market because you were never going to deliver on the promises that were made.
It's such a common story, isn't it, George? We come across this all the time where when you really dive into your ICPs, you realize who isn't in that ICP and who you always thought was that isn't. And that kind of realization is exactly why we put so much emphasis in that be ready stage, which is where we're coming back to today, why we're talking about your anti-ICP, because it's one of the greatest realizations when you apply that 80/20 principle, when you build your ICPs properly, following the 5Bs framework that we've laid out in this section, you'll get to this concept of anti-ICPs over time, and you'll start to realize how much money you could be saving and you could be funneling into your marketing efforts.
All right, well, let's look at how to define your anti-ICP. And Kevin, as you said, it starts with that 80/20 analysis, the 80/20 principle being the idea that 20% of the input leads to 80% of the output. So for a lot of business, that looks like 80% of your profit or revenue, however you look at it, comes from just 20% of your customers, meaning, hey, there are some people that are your best customers. They fit like a glove. They're really good for your business. And then there are others which are more of a drag on it. We want to find more of those like really best fit customers. So the anti-ICP exercise starts by looking at not just your best fit, but actually your worst fit customers. So who have the highest churn? Who has the lowest ACV, the lowest average contract value? Who has the longest sales cycles? Who has the poorest NPS or customer satisfaction in the surveys that you're running? These are all signals for you to collect, all data points for you to collect to start to get a picture on, hey, maybe these aren't the best fit for us. You can go beyond the data too, Kevin. A lot exercise that we love getting people to run in the incubator is asking each department, marketing, sales, customer success, who are your favorite customers and who are your least favorite? And then you start to see some patterns there too.
Yeah, and you can just like the ICPs profiles that you're building, you can do this with the anti-ICPs. Maybe change the color of these profiles to red or something that's very alarming, clearly distinguishing them from your ICPs. But it's just as important to document who your anti-ICPs are so you can figure out, okay, what are the trends that really group these people together that we really shouldn't focus efforts on? Because if they come through the door, if they show these features, then we know to put the least amount of resources behind closing those because they're very likely to be low priority. And you can document these in terms of, and we like to circle back to that same concept of looking at both firmographics and demographics. So in your ICPs, you would have documented these features. So do the same thing for your anti-ICPs. A quick recap here on what those are. Demographics are those individual characteristics like things like age, income, job title of people in your ICP. But firmographics is more about the company characteristics, maybe industry, size, revenue, tech stack, or even things like their point of view of the world from their company mission statement or their company ethos. Potentially could be a really defining feature in how these ICPs and anti-ICPs are grouped together. And in the B2B context that we often talk about, firmographics are often going to matter more than the demographics because you're selling to businesses as well as individuals, and quite often in the business context rather than those people in the individual context. So it's important to have those firmographics down as well.
You might even be able to, Kevin, segment it kind of by use case, right? By use case too, right? Looking at which actual key benefit or key feature did we sell these people on and which one did they get the most out of too? Because then we know, okay, like, every business, we have multiple things that we sell in, but which one are we actually delivering on best and which one are people getting the most value out of? That's another thing that we should probably really write down too. Like, what is the key use case? And then inversely, we need to look at, well, what are the worst ones? What are the promises that we're making, the features that we're building, that people are buying our product or service for, that we're really not able to deliver on in a way that they can show value, that they can feel value?
And another thing to really keep in mind when you're doing this exercise of anti-ICPs, particularly in the B2B context, is that in these sort of more complex deals, you need to balance the need to get your firmographics down with the need to also get some demographics down, because likely you're selling to a buying committee, which is made up of multiple people, but multiple people who are individuals as well. So it's important in comparing the B2B and B2C world, when you're in that B2B world, you need to look at buying committees, but then you need to drill one layer deeper to look at that B2C context as well. What are they like as individuals, as decision makers or decision influencers? What are their demographics at the individual level? But then come back up to the company level to look at who are the actual buyers, use cases, and things like that at the company business level. And your anti-ICP must account for this layered reality where you have those two layers competing with each other and you need to talk to both.
And that comes down to, Kevin, with the buying committee, putting yourself in the right circles as well. And that's really what we say when it's around B scene, the third B in our 5Bs framework, is making sure that you're in the right places so the key decision makers see you and trust you. So there's some recall of their brand, especially if they're involved in this purchasing decision. It's important to run in the right circles. So that demographic factor, where they hang out, both online and offline, becomes quite important.
And simply then you can build that exclusion profile right alongside your dream customer avatar. You can almost use the same template, but just flip it on its head and say, why are these guys not a good fit for your particular business? And I think, George, this is a good time to talk about that cataloging the market, because it's effectively another way of getting that value out of the customer interviews and another way to get to building those anti-ICPs that you really need.
Yes, thank you for the reminder, Kevin. So cataloging the market is something that we learnt from Adam Manderovich. It's not magic fairy dust. Let me just say that. It's something that's actually done very commonly, at least here in Australia in the finance sectors. It was done pre-tech by a lot of organizations. People just aren't on LinkedIn screaming about it. But basically what it is your BD, your SDR, it might even be someone from the marketing department. It's about literally pulling the known universe of accounts that you would be a great fit for and contacting them. That means like calling, emailing, LinkedIn DMing, however it is, to simply catalog, meaning not trying to sell them, but to speak to them and to find out who it is that they currently use, being like what vendor they currently use, what they pay, what they like, what they don't like, when their contract is up, and then seeking things like permission to circle back at the right time as well. This gives you all the information that you need up front before you've even tried to pull someone into a meeting, before you've even tried to sell to them. This gives you all the information to say, hey, you know what? There actually is some kind of potential here for us to work together. Because if someone says to you, oh, we really like this vendor that we're currently with because of this feature that they offer, and you know that that's not on your product roadmap and that's not something that you have, well, then you're not going to go and spend a whole lot of money circling back to them. You're not going to go and send them gifts as part of like an ABM program, because guess what? The way that your product or service works isn't actually a good fit to them. And this ties back to that story I told earlier with that person who joined Chief Revenue School and learned how to do this cataloging and said, hey, they discovered that they were spending $5,000 to $10,000 on a company that was never, ever going to be a good fit for their business. And so that's why this is such an effective way to go to market, and why it's actually so important, Kevin, for our go to market success, for people to start cataloging the market. And we've updated stage 1, be ready, I think, with cataloging the market as well as our process, because once we learnt this from Adam, who, I give him crap about this, but Adam is older than us. He still looks terrific. Don't worry, Adam, you look fantastic. But he was there in the before time when all of this stuff was happening, when it was commonplace. And then it got replaced by predictable revenue. But now that doesn't work anymore again, because guess what? Predictable revenue is working on volume. It's spraying and praying the market, and everyone is sick of it. So now we're going to go back to those business fundamentals, those things that drive commercial acumen. And that's what this process like cataloging the market does, and why it's really important to do it, to help you understand who your best fit customers are, but also those who will never, ever be a fit for you. So you don't have to deal with it at sales. So you don't have to deal with it when they churn at customer success.
And for those of us very familiar with the paid landscape, we know what it's like when you're talking to a Google rep or a Meta rep. They'll say to keep your spend on all year round, pretty much all the same, and really just to be in market all the time, irrespective of season, of the month or whatever. Sometimes they'll say certain months are a bit quieter and you can pull back the spend. But imagine if you know from the cataloging activity exactly when every customer is going to make that business decision about whether to use a product like yours and when they're going to go to tender to renew their current contract with the current vendor who might be a competitor. Imagine if you only need to spend on a particular group of customers on the months that are leading up to that decision. How much more could you save if you cut out all the other months that are not relevant in a year against those particular customers? Your ABM efforts, I'm sure, will be a lot more effective, and your anti-ICP work will come into handy here as well, because you'll know the ones that in fact aren't in market right now, but might be in market later on, might be a good fit, just not the right timing. So there might be an anti-ICP just purely on the fact that they're not currently in market. So that's how powerful cataloging can be. It can give you all this information about who's potentially in your ICP, who's not in your ICP, and when they're going to become someone who will be in your ICP group.
Kevin, just to really drive the point home here, why we love it and why it's so powerful is not only do you collect the information from the key person, but you get permission to circle back at the right time. And so, okay, we don't have anything for you right now. Your contract isn't up for another 2 years. You're not going to break that because there isn't anything you dislike enough about them. But based on what they've told you, you can ask, would it make sense for me to circle back in, 18 months from now, just before you start your tender process again, so we can come back to you at the right time to see if we'd be a better fit for you, because based on what you've told us, we might be able to help you out there. So we're not pushing them when they don't need to be pushed. We're striking with precision. And that's why it's so powerful.
All right, listeners. Well, there you have it. That is how to build your anti-ICP and how you can use it to effectively improve your marketing and go-to-market efficiency. Key takeaways for this episode: building a dream customer avatar is only half the job. Defining your anti-ICPs saves time, money, and pain across marketing, sales, and customer success over time. Use cataloging as a technique to help build those anti-ICPs better as well. And finally, keep in mind that you're dealing with single decision makers and buying committees. So make sure to build that complexity, that layering into your dream customer profiles, as well as your anti-ICP profiles.
Beautiful. Thank you, Kevin. Okay, listeners and viewers, as always, you can find the links to everything that we discussed in the show notes. We're very grateful that every week more and more tuning into the B2B Playbook every Monday. If we could ask one thing, it would be to please pass the show on to someone who you think would get value from it. That would be a huge help to us. Also, check us out on YouTube. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, listeners. Thank you, viewers. Take care and catch you next week.
Thank you, George. Thank you, viewers and listeners. Take care and catch you all next week.